About the audit in Trenton that was reported last week, the audit describes deep-rooted weaknesses in internal controls, not a one-time lapse. So it seems to be a recurring issue in that particular municipality. The violations appear to span multiple budget cycles and administrative periods, indicating a culture where procurement laws were routinely disregarded. This raises the concern that prior warnings, audits, or oversight measures either failed or were insufficiently enforced. And as a mayor, you live and die by these sort of rules, and you really try and stay within them. So it's quite noticeable when they run afoul, municipality runs afoul of it. Given that Trenton was under your department's direct fiscal supervision, can you specifically explain what oversight mechanisms failed and how DCA failed to catch these violations, and why no corrective intervention stopped the pattern in real time?
Sure. So I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of what the Division of Local Government Services does when it comes to municipal budgets. We do not have full control over budgets. We make sure that the budgets as introduced meet the statutory requirements before they can move forward to be adopted. Trenton is a transitional municipality, which means we have some additional oversight of the city. We are typically looking at things that will negatively impact their budget, like hires, promotions, entering into new contracts, adding additional services, whatever those might look like. We do not have full oversight of their day-to-day operations like we do in Atlantic City, for example, which is under a separate state supervision article.
Right, but whatever oversight you do have, you would recognize irregularities, in their operations, wouldn't you, with the oversight that you do have?
Only to a certain extent. So again, this goes back to we have waivers, for example. Waivers are submitted to us. It means they cannot hire or promote or add new additional staff members without our prior approval. We do not approve every single contract that goes through those doors. What we've done in response to what we've all learned in that report is put up additional protocols within Trenton proper. So as you mentioned, right, as a mayor, you would make sure that these things were already handled in your community or should be handled in your community, right? What we know about a lot of our fiscally distressed municipalities is we need to make sure that they have the support necessary and that they have the right guardrails in place to make sure that these types of things don't happen. Trenton, what we are working with them on now is making sure that their business administrator, for example, sees certain contracts before they get approved. We are making sure that there are internal processes that have been implemented to make sure that these types of things would be caught going forward in the future. But these types of contracts would not be something that is typically reviewed by our technical advisors as the component of the transitional aid MOU in order to fortify against this going forward in the future and to make sure that some sort of corrective action is being taken. We are now going to incorporate that into our addendum in the transitional aid MOU, the memorandum of understanding in which we enter into with those communities. They get the money, we get additional oversight. So this will now be incorporated into that to make sure these processes are stood up in the future. But to your point about auditor missed it, their annual financial statements, things of that did not catch what was going on. We're putting in additional protocols to make sure that that would not happen going forward. But I do want to be clear, we do not have the staff, we don't have the capability to be overlooking every single financial document that comes through every municipality across the state of New Jersey. If we want to talk about that conversation, I might need to increase the staff level by 1,000-fold, but.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems a little odd that there may have been red flags somewhere along the line that would have, raised concerns about this occurring as it happened, and not just during the, here we go, towards the end of the process. So that's, rather stop it before it gets to the point that it did. Is, I guess, my point.
Of course, we always want to catch things as soon as possible. What I will say, though, is that that's not in our normal purview of what we do with normal municipalities and or transitional aid municipalities. We're now going to add that as another component just to make sure we can fortify against it in the future. But that would not be something that we would have anticipated or expected to be a shortcoming or a shortfall that we should have been monitoring for, if that makes sense.
Just curious, what do you mean by normal municipalities?
So, no, I mean, that would not be something that we have seen regularly, for example. That would be something that should be a best practice implemented through the transitional aid program, for example.
Got
right?
it.
So we have like pay-to-play laws that we require as part of our MOU. But this was not something that we had seen before to know or think that this should have been something to be incorporated. Now that we have seen that happen, we of course are going to incorporate it. But it would not have been something that our team would normally look for in our process.
Okay, and I get that, and just to tie complete the loop here, beyond identifying these problems after the fact, what enforcement action, like do you have any specific enforcement actions that you're going to implement here in the future to recover funds, impose penalties, or future violations? That there's got to be some deterrent after what was reported, in the future. Can you give any examples of some of those things?
So we don't, like that, none of that authority would fall under our jurisdiction, right? We don't have like investigatory powers or anything along those lines. That would be another body that would have those capabilities. The only thing that we have in our purview is the ability to now work that into the transitional aid MOU, for example, to make sure that this does not occur going forward, and to kind of put some guardrails in place to ensure that they put these processes into action going forward.
Okay.
But we don't have the ability to penalize, or do any of that sort of thing. That's not within our purview.
Okay, just, and last, just to close the loop here, who would be the body then? Who would be the investigatory body and, the enforcement arm?
So I would assume that could be something looked at by like the Office of Public Integrity or perhaps the Comptroller's Office or something along those lines.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Every cut in the Department of Community Affairs was considered a discretionary line item in last year's budget. But that is a broad-based policy. We would like to know the impact. Could you please provide for each line item that was reduced in the budget, the state program that provides comparable services to each one of those cuts?
Sure, you want us to like provide that through the chair? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, if you could do that, if it's too lengthy, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head every single one that was projected, and then we'd have to match it to something else. But a lot of them were, like, I know LIHEAP is probably one of them, or some sort of utility assistance is usually the ones that were asked about. If our LIHEAP, our USEF programs are not oversubscribed currently, right? So we're still taking applications at this juncture. They run typically from like October 1st through June 30th. For the application periods. So when we're talking about certain line items, if those were completely cut, it's not as if there's not additional services that would be able to service those individuals.
Okay, I think it would be helpful for us to know this, what, maybe duplicative between departments and things like that, and, where the efficiencies could lie, because that's very helpful.
Yes.
Where, what one department is doing that could save you some money or some,
Absolutely.
Some funding. Who decided which line items to cut in the budget?
As I mentioned to Assemblyman Schnall, that was just a whole approach. So the governor wasn't looking at the merits of those. She wanted to make sure that was going to be an interactive discussion and conversation going forward with the budget.
Okay, so you wouldn't know if a cost-benefit analysis was done for each proposed?
I would not. That might be a better question for the treasurer if that was done.
Okay, so budget language on page D79 allows transitional aid to be allocated to a municipality experiencing financial distress caused by the destruction or loss of a major local business rateable. Which municipalities currently qualify under that provision in particular, and how much has each recovered in prior years under that specific authorization?
Prior years, I would definitely have to get you the list, because off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, because I also don't know how far back you want us to go, like my tenure, Director Rogers' tenure.
Fine. That would be perfect, actually.
Okay, we can get that to you.
Could, and also, how much does the department anticipate awarding in FY 2027? And if you don't have a number right now, that's fine. If you can get it through the chair, that would be great.
Sure.
Okay. And there's budget language in page D80 that allows the allocation of short-term financial assistance to a municipality in serious fiscal distress. Has the department and the director of the Division of Local Government Services identified any municipalities that qualify for short-term financial assistance despite implementing substantive cost reduction strategies?
Those are all pretty much looped into our, like the transitional aid program as a whole. And that goes back to the conversation I think I had earlier with Assemblyman Venezia just about whether or not they should be loans or they should be granting. And quite candidly, this is why we should have a conversation about what the future of the transitional aid program looks like and what direction it should be going into based on the needs and the structural fortitude of these municipalities' budgets.
Okay. And are there any municipalities that would qualify if they implemented substantive cost reduction strategies?
Well, as a condition of the transitional aid program, they have to institute certain things that would reduce costs overall.
Okay,
so that's a requirement.
That's automatic
yeah,
criteria.
it's a requirement of being a participant in the program.
Okay. Mayor Solomon has been very vocal about Jersey City needing $150 million in transitional state aid to bridge its massive budget deficit. And, you know, being from Central Jersey, Jersey City has always been, you know, an area of interest, let's put it, as far as their fiscal condition with the use of pilots. That's been very controversial, you know. So that's why when we see this kind of ask from Jersey City, it raises an eyebrow, which the mayor has said that they will apply for. Could you give us the status of that?
So they did apply. No awards have been granted. Our team continues to work closely with Jersey City and their finance office. They've been extraordinarily cooperative. The Solomon administration has been very forthcoming, opening up their books, adhering to our suggestions at this juncture. I want to be really clear. Us providing some sort of technical assistance does not mean that they're going to receive transitional aid. We do that with all of our applicants to make sure that they are making the best decisions possible to fortify their budget going forward. And they've been doing that. They have not been doing additional hires. They have been working through attrition. They have been reducing costs wherever possible, looking to restructure debt, entering into shared services with other communities moving forward, which of course, by the time that's implemented would not impact this year's budget, but future budgets. So they have been making the necessary changes and tough decisions going forward. But they are not incorporated currently with any of the transitional aid asks that we have made to the governor's office. And no decision has been rendered there as to what it's going to look like if they should receive any type of aid from the state.
Okay, has the department determined if they are eligible?
I think we're still working through what that looks like as we continue to progress through their budget. There certainly is a shortfall. We're not going to deny what Mayor Solomon is saying. There is a shortfall. How we bridge that shortfall will be the question.
Yeah, $150 million is quite a shortfall. Mm-hmm. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.